This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm an alcoholic. There's another seat up here if somebody wants to take the seat I was sitting in. Sean, thank you so much for asking me to speak, and I'm glad it worked out. Sean asked me to speak, oh goodness, I think it was probably in 2007. And I had the plan to speak in January, and I was really ill the night before I went to Australia. And so we got somebody else, somebody from my sobriety family, I think, came down and spoke. And then he asked me again, and, I travel a lot. I'm freelance, and I went to New York, and so I'm glad it worked out. And I'm actually really glad to be here because you guys have lots of energy, and I can see the sense of community. I can feel the sense of community. I have a home group. My home group is the log cabin, and, I don't know if we have as much energy as you guys do because we're at 7:30 in the morning, but we got a lot of energy, and, the regulars, when they share, we do the same kind of thing. Everybody's got their own little, something when they announce their name, and, we say it in an accent, or, we do the S's for a really long time. And it's just really like a way of showing, that you care for the person and that this is your group and you know who these people are. And exactly. Exactly. So I actually really like that. I really like that. Let's see. Where do I want to start? Well, I identify myself as an alcoholic. Most of my story, or most of my experience, even though I did do alcohol, was, trying other substances. And I'm somebody that was incarcerated, and I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous through a period of time, 9 months for this one particular time, where I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. And this woman, helped me out and told me that I needed to get a home group, and gave me some phone numbers. And when I got out, I did exactly what it is that she told me to do because I was desperate. I had gotten to the end of the line. And I had heard about Alcoholics Anonymous before. I'd actually been to Alcoholics Anonymous before. My dad is in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have several siblings who have been in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had boyfriends that had been going to Alcoholics Anonymous to get a court card signed, and I had attended with them. But when somebody mentioned the word Alcoholics Anonymous when it was about my life, I had no idea what that was. It was just a word. And so I started going because I wanted to get out of my cell. I was in maximum security, and like I said, this woman helped me, and people would come for panels, and I couldn't really understand why it is that they would come. But whatever the reason it was, I liked what I heard, and I had a spiritual awakening while I was in my jail cell. And, kind of very similar to the one that they talk about in the book, where my body got warm, and tears started running down my eyes. And, I started to waken up to what it was that was actually going on. And it was all because of Alcoholics Anonymous. So when I got out of jail, I, kind of did what they were telling me to do. I did do what they told me to do, but I didn't know what telling me to do, what that meant, if that makes sense. If you're a newcomer for the very first time and you have, 2, 3, 4, 30, 60, 90 days, it's like people are telling you to do things and you're doing them, but you don't really know what you're doing. It's like you're just doing it to do it. And, I started going to meetings, and I had gone to treatment, and, there's this woman who told me, identify in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous as an alcoholic. And when you're in another meeting, identify as something different. Because the only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking, and I had the desire to stop drinking. And identify as an alcoholic and carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that message is love, compassion, mercy, and tolerance. And that's what that message is. And I always like to mention that because maybe people are cross-addicted, maybe you're just a heroin addict and you just happen to come to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, maybe you have a different substance, but whatever it is, for me, I had people like you reach their hand out to me and say, you're welcome, no matter what. And I felt welcome, and I lost everything. I lost everything a couple times, and It was, again, people like you that brought me clothes, that, gave me a job, that, believed in me and helped me do small little acts to gain self-esteem. Because when I started coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had lost every bit of self-esteem that I could possibly think of. So, doing little things like mopping the floor or, having a commitment, whatever, how big, greeter commitment or coffee commitment, all of that stuff, to know that I could show up and actually complete something really meant a lot to me, and it meant a lot to you guys. You started to get to know who I was, and I started to get to know who you were and who you are, and I started feeling comfortable in the rooms. And because of that, I slowly but surely have been able to, get a life. And I don't know if I really actually ever had a life. I'm somebody that started really early. I started, I believe now through inventory, which I didn't really know at the time, but my first addiction was food. And then my second addiction was love. I ate a lot of food, a lot of sugar. I used to bake all the time with my mother when I was in grade school. And then I actually, thought I fell in love with somebody. And then I used to ride my bike to see if I could see them, on the way to school all the time. So then I lost all the weight. And then I actually came across marijuana. So it was one thing after another. I'm chasing after whatever it is, And it's kind of like that in sobriety, Now that I've, pushed the drugs and alcohol down, it's the Jack in the Box is still happening. Every little other thing is going on. I heard a guy in the meeting say the other day that, now that the monkey's off my back, the circus is still going, and it's very true. It's very true. And, I got high for the first time when I was 14, and I loved it. I couldn't believe it. It was this experience that, I just laughed and laughed and laughed. And so then I never got high like that again, like that first time, but I kept on chasing that over and over. And so I'd get high before I went to school, at lunchtime, after school, I'd have practice of some kind of sport I was in. And then after dinner with my family, I'd go and meet my friends and I'd get high again. And that's basically the way, whether the drug changed or not, all the way until I got sober, whether it was, I went through that time period until then I went to mixing everything I could possibly think of to kind of get the right cocktail. That was kind of the, alcoholic I was, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, too much of this, so let me add that, and let me figure this out. And it seemed like I was always trying to be the chemist to get the perfect feeling. And I always attracted the people that, wanted to be, feeling the same way that I did. You talk about, I don't even know if they were lower companions because they were just like me, like attracts like. So in sobriety, if I'm doing my steps and, I'm having spiritual experiences and changes and I'm growing on the spiritual path, then I start attracting, like type people, if I'm not and I'm, not in alignment with my higher power and I'm, still kind of manipulating and lying and deceiving, then, I tend to get myself into messy situations. Maybe I still have some of the same friends, but it seems like things start to kind of go like crazy, Things don't necessarily work out. There's no synergy in my life. And so that's true, sober or not sober. I think that emotional sobriety is a huge part of my life today and where it is. I'm, 8 years and 4 months sober. So just to kind of go back through what it was like, it's like I said, it was, always trying to find something, and it was always about the boyfriend, and I always was dating the drug dealer, and, and then the drug dealer got arrested and went to prison, and then I became the drug dealer, and, it was always about having, and then I got addicted to the power, and, I had a very short period of time where, I was going to art school in Pittsburgh, and I was able to kind of have a moment of clarity. And I'd like to talk about that because I think in my history, I've had several moments of clarity of when I thought that, something needed to be different. And if you don't jump through that window of that moment of clarity, that window will shut. And then all of a sudden, you're back to your old ways of thinking, And so this last time, 8 years and 4 months ago, I jumped through that window and I was able to continue, on this path through the help of you guys. But there's been, again, an inventory. When I did my first step, I had to write about unmanageability, and every time I tried to control or stop my using. And those were all of those times, usually was a moment of clarity. Usually I drank too much and I was sick, and, I felt like shit, or, I lost a job, or, I was going to lose something, and I had this idea that, oh my gosh, I need to do something different, But then all of a sudden the thinking kicks back in because I don't have the tools and what it is that I need to know to do differently. And then I go back to my old way of life. And so that's what sober time gives me. Sober time gives me reflection on how the tools that you guys teach me actually work in my life. I had to start from square one when I got here. I come from a really good family. My parents always provided. I was, educated. I traveled. But when it came down to living my life, I knew absolutely nothing. I didn't know how to interview for a job. I didn't know how to have a bank account. I didn't know how to meet people without making them feel or without me having the intention that I wanted something from them. And I've learned all of that. And as time went on through, using and through, making wreckage and having these moments of clarity where I'd get something together, and, maybe I'd have a year. I have a specific time I was able to move to California, and I had a year and a half of where I was able to kind of focus on what it is that I wanted to do. And once things started to get a little bit okay, then I started, adding more of the darkness. And what that means is I was somewhere around 24 years old, and I stuck a needle in my arm for the very first time, and I thought, oh my goodness, it's all over. This is it. This is exactly what it is that I've been looking for my entire life. And I can remember that exact moment. And from that very, very first moment, there was nothing else in my life that became more important, more sacred, and more special to me than trying to get that feeling again. People around me died, I was the kind of person that would use that I would overdose. I'd, maybe go to Cedars-Sinai Hospital, and I'd wake up from somebody would give me some Narcan, and the first thing that would come to my mind was, where's my dope at the house? That's what I was thinking of. Not about, oh my gosh, I just almost lost my life. No, not about, that I'm at Cedars-Sinai Hospital, for a drug overdose. It's about, where's my stuff? Where's my stash? Somebody at my house is going to get it. And that's pretty dark. That's pretty dark. That's pretty hopeless. When your favorite feeling is, having your head on a table and being completely numb, And, today I have such a huge joy of living. I was talking to Sean, who's actually wearing my Kansas color. I am going to the Final Four on Friday. And so, things like this, it's this is joy of living for me. I went to Australia in January. I was in New York the week before. Now I'm going to see my husband bought me tickets to go see the Final Four for Christmas, not knowing who was going to be in this March Madness tournament. I've always been a Kansas fan and when I get into my story a little bit longer, that's where I got arrested. That's where Alcoholics Anonymous was introduced to me. And, once I got sober, I had to find something that, gave me some kind of excitement and some kind of rush. And one of the things is college basketball. So, my husband bought me these tickets. He gave me this large box with a deflated basketball inside of it, and there was duct tape on the bottom. And I opened it up, and I, being so ungrateful and not knowing what it was, I'm like, "What is this?" He's like, "Open it up," and it was a piece of paper, and it said, it had a seating chart of the Alamo in San Antonio, Texas. And it says, "We're going to the Final Four," and so. It's just kind of it was very exciting, but I felt like I was opening I'm like, it's a piece of paper. It's Christmas. I want something now. We want the instant gratification. Something shiny, right? Where's my big red bow? So I didn't get my big red bow, but now we're coming up to it, and I couldn't be more excited because I've been watching and I've been like getting all of this like rush about, oh my gosh, is my team gonna make it? And it couldn't be more perfect. It's kind of like how life is, you know, and it's a weird analogy, but it's not. How life is in Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, we don't really know what it is that's being presented to us. It seems like it might be kind of dull and boring. You know, we don't really understand it. You walk through, you know, the time, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, it couldn't be any more perfect. It couldn't be any more perfect. I'm going here to this weekend. I'm going to see what it is that I'm going to exactly do. You know, I'm going to have my husband with me, and, you know, I'm going to have a great, great time. So it's like, you know, I was thinking earlier, like, I don't know if any of you guys remember if you went to any of like the amusement parks. There used to be like this ride called I think it was the teacup ride, and you used to sit in these big teacups, right? And you used to like turn the wheel, and like, and that's kind of like me with life, like with my self-will. I'm like trying to completely turn the wheel as hard as I can. It's getting harder and harder. Then all of a sudden you let go, and you like spin really fast. It's like, woo, like what's happening? And that's kind of like what happens when you let go in your life in sobriety with God. It's like all of a sudden you've been controlling, you've been manipulating, you've been like trying to like manage everything in this way, and you let go, and everything seems kind of like, okay, you know, this is where I am today. Let's see what's going to happen. It looks like everything's spinning around. I can't really see what's going on, but it ends up being okay, you know? And that's what I had to learn when I was doing the third step. Even today, it took me a long time. You know, I could make the decision, but to actually work the third step, it's like I'm taking my hands off the wheel. I'm letting my higher power be the driver of my life, because I've just had so many amazing things happen to me. You know, I have an opportunity to actually, you know, Dave, I want to thank you, because Dave gave me some CDs before that I gave it to my husband's sponsor, and I brought it home to my parents, who, you know, I went to go see my parents a couple weeks ago. I travel a lot. And, you know, one of the biggest gifts of my sobriety is my relationship with my mom and my dad. And I spoke at a meeting a while ago. It was the Rodeo meeting, and I was able to put some, you know, it was the first time I'd ever been taped. And I was able to bring those tapes home and give it to my parents because, you know, and I gave one to my brother. And my one brother is not an alcoholic. And I cannot understand how it is that he thinks, just like he can't understand how it is that I think. You know, I definitely have the 3-part disease. You know, I have, you know, the allergy, I have the obsession, and I have the spiritual malady. I have all 3 of them. And some people might have 1, some people might have 2. But for me as an alcoholic, which defines me as an alcoholic, I have all 3. And, you know, I had a conversation with my family, and they said that they couldn't really understand, you know, when things are going well or not going well, why it is that we have the thought that we want to do something that's going to make it worse. And I couldn't really explain that. I could just say that we're, you know, bodily and mentally different than our fellows. And, you know, like one of the stories is like right before I got arrested with like 12 felonies, is, you know, I had just had a bunch of stuff. I was told you I was a drug dealer, and I had about an ounce of heroin with me, and I went down to go get, you know, to get some crack cocaine, and I had probably about $4,000 in cash in my wallet, and I decided, I was with a friend who was driving, and I decided to shoplift an $18 handbag from a pretty cheesy store, a pretty silly store. And that's the kind of thing that alcoholics do, you know? Why on earth would I do that? Why wouldn't I just pay for it? I just had like this sense of entitlement. And this was where it was right before I actually, you know, got sober. And we got pulled over because they had suspected me of, you know, shoplifting the handbag, and she had expired plates. And knowing that I had all of this in my purse, when the cops pulled us over, I decided that I was going to try to run. That was a really good idea for me. And obviously I didn't get very far, and I got kind of pushed on the ground and in the gravel, and I got, you know, maced in the face, and I, you know, got put in handcuffs, and they thought I was, you know, dangerous, and I lied about my name. And She went into one police car because she didn't steal the purse, and all she had was expired tags. And they found a little bit of paraphernalia in me, but they didn't find the ounce of heroin at that time. But I knew it wasn't going to be too long before they found it, and so they put me into another cop car. And I kept on screaming, just let me go. I just want to die. I couldn't handle that moment. Now, here I had created this moment, but I couldn't handle that moment. I was completely responsible for what it is that it actually is going on in my life at this time. But it was so overwhelming that all I wanted to do was black out. And it's exactly what happens if it's this big dramatic moment that I'm talking about right now, or if it's a small moment. As an alcoholic, it's like sometimes it's the pebble in our shoe that we can't deal with. I couldn't deal with it, and all I wanted to do was like fade to black. And that was like my best idea. And I started screaming, and you know what? I don't know what to say about this police officer. I really don't know what to say about him. I don't know how moral and ethical this police officer was. I have no idea. All I know is that I screamed to him, I've got to get out of here. And he told me, you want to get out? And I said, yes. And so he rolled down the window, and here I am handcuffed with 2 handcuffs behind my back, and the window only goes down about halfway. And I decide that I'm going to stick my head out the window, and I'm going to start edging up, and I'm about 100 pounds at this time. And so my body actually is about 3/4 of the way out the window while he's driving about 30 miles an hour. And he slams on the brakes, and my body falls forward, and he opens the door, and he grabs me by the hair, and he's, because at this time I'm running, right? I'm like a fugitive, and so he grabs me by the hair, and he starts pounding my head, against the car seat, and then all of a sudden I bite the inside of his leg. And now, I don't know if any of you guys are police officers, but if you are, an aggravated battery on a law enforcement officer is not a fun thing. It doesn't make you very popular with other police officers. So that's kind of where it was with my last using bit. And that's where it was that brought me into maximum security. And that's how it was that I got introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. And it took something like that for me to actually slow down. And I think that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Now, if you only got here because of your emotional depletion, or because you thought that maybe you had a drinking problem and you cannot relate to anything that I am telling you at all right now, I will tell you that it is the emptiness that I felt and the same feelings that you felt that actually got me to stop. It wasn't all of this stuff that happened. That helped me slow down enough to get into my head about the feelings it was that I was actually experiencing, and realizing that I am not on the spiritual path that my higher power wanted me to be on. Because I had had a boyfriend that had been murdered 3 months before this whole situation by a $60 crack cocaine deal. And I had a boyfriend that had died on the 101 2 years before that, due to drinking, and was, killed on the 101 highway. None of that stuff slowed me down enough. It was, thank God, I was stopped so that I could slow down, so that I could let the Spirit come into my soul and tell me and show me that I have an opportunity and an option for life. And because of that, I'm standing here today, and it's all by seconds and inches, and I talk about that a lot. I'm sure a lot of you guys have had experiences where there was a choice with seconds and inches, changed everything. Last time I spoke in a meeting, I kind of talked a little bit about this story about the boyfriend that died on the 101, and someone came up to me and they said, I think you know my wife. And the last time, her name was Sandy, and I actually saw her here in the Marina Center. I think I spoke here about 5 years ago. Sandy White. And Sandy White used to be my drug dealer. And, he gave me, I gave him my card at that meeting, and she called me a couple days ago, and I just spoke to her on the way down here. She has 9 years sobriety, and she's married, and she has 2 kids, and she has a home, and she works in a law firm, and, she's doing really well. And I thought, oh my gosh, if she can get sober, then, I didn't even know she was getting sober, but I'm thinking, how miraculous is this program? This program can take anybody who has seen the darkest of the dark and give you a life and give you an opportunity, as long as you have the willingness to do what it is that is suggested to you. And you know what? Some days I don't have the willingness to, do what my sponsor suggests to me. But the thing is about my foundation is that I've learned that I do rather than think, by having the repetitive over and over about, picking up the phone, going to the meeting, going to the commitment, working the steps, being of service, helping others. That is what has given me the opportunity to grow one day at a time. And, I have a sister right now who was at my morning meeting this morning, and she's my older sister, and she, stood up as a newcomer with one day today. And, one day, I don't know if any of you guys can remember what it was like to have one day. For me, when I had one day, I couldn't even think about what it was like to have 1 minute, And when people stood up and they took a cake for 17 years, I thought, you know what, they are so full of shit. There is no way, if you're anything like me, that you can get, even a week, a month, or a year of sobriety, let alone 17 years, So one of the things that I've been trying to work on with the steps right now is, the 6th step and my emotional sobriety. I've been kind of flipping all over back and forth, but I'm really trying to get connected because about 3 years ago, I think it was about 3 years ago, my body started doing all these really weird things. Like my legs started getting numb, my arms started getting numb, and automatically I think, I'm having a stroke, something's happening, And what I realized at that time that, I'm not connected spiritually. And my body is starting to, show signs of how I'm not turning things over, how I'm manifesting this stress. And so, same things happened to me recently. I've just been diagnosed with TMJ, and I'm having my ear I can't hear, and I'm having vertigo, and I'm all off balance, and it's the same thing, and yeah, there is some medical treatment that I can do for this, but I believe, and this is just for me, is that there's a spiritual solution to all of my problems, and that my body, because I don't take a drink, because holy cow, I'm not taking a drink, so my body needs to do something, right? So I either need to pray and meditate, be of service, and go to meetings, right? Pick up my program, or my body's going to start tweaking out. And that's exactly what's been happening. And so to me, I got to really listen to my body, and I really need to step up my program. And that just means I need to, pick up another sponsee. It means maybe I need to work through the steps or the traditions again. It talks about, I always love it when I work with somebody and I go through the beginning of the book, and it talks about, this is a text, it's proven that it can work for, all types of people, meaning whether you're alcoholic or not. And I always underline the word text because it means that we can read it over and over again. It's something that we learn. It's not something that you read once, because, how many times, for me, when I say, okay, well, let's read Bill's story. Oh, I've read Bill's story so many times. But you know what? The thing is, every time I read Bill's story, I relate to something different, or I hear something new that I didn't hear last time, or I remember it, but it didn't really make sense and it didn't really click. And that's another thing about this program, is that I'm constantly growing on a different spiritual level. It's like my God was here, and my God was only so big when I was, newly sober, and now I'm growing, and my God's getting bigger, and my life is getting bigger, and my problems too are getting, bigger. The quality problems, when I was using, I only had one problem, and that was to get more, Now I've got to deal with life on life's term, and my time is up. I just want to say that I'm really, really, really grateful to be sober. I'm really one of those people that love sobriety. When I first was here, I didn't really even have a life. I just went to meetings. And, as a person who travels, I've found meetings all over the place. There's online meetings, and there's no reason why, we can't stay connected, because the growth of AA has just been tremendous, over the last few decades. And I'm just really proud to be a part of this. And thank you so much.